from Israel by Elon Troen. He is a professor at Brandeis University. His daughter and son-in-law were killed in these attacks. Professor, first, just my most sincere condolences to you and to your family. I want to just hear about your daughter and her family.
Sadly or happily, I'm happy to do so. First of all, I live in Israel, and that's where I'm talking to you now, and that's where my daughter lived. She was born in Boone County, Missouri, but we all came to Israel in 1945, and she is an American, one of the Americans who count as an American casualty as well. Her husband, Shlomi, who was also killed, was born in Beersheba. They were a couple of idealists who sent their kids to a school where you learned Arabic and Hebrew together in the hope that somehow Jews and Arabs would learn to understand more about each other and be able to come to accommodation and change the course of history here. And so there's a special bitterness in what has happened to them, these idealistic kids. We found out about all of this on telephone. What you have to understand about this war is it's being mislabeled. It is a pogrom. It is the kind of event that brought my grandparents to the United States a century ago. Is an event where militarized people purposefully attack and intimidate civilians, not other military targets. The Hamas attacks Jews just because that is their faith and that is their identity. The taking of civilians is their intention, and it is a particularly cruel intention. What has America done successfully to get the release of its prisoners of war from Iran, Somalia, or any of the other places where Americans get embroiled in conflicts? This is not a war of national liberation. This is not a war between states. It is a war between a quasi-state that enjoys the support of real states against a group of people whom it detests, who would like to subjugate and ultimately eliminate. Read the Hamas Declaration of Independence or its charter. So we are in a very difficult bind. They rehearsed this, they planned for this, and they did it brilliantly. And my government screwed up, if that's permissible in television, and did not know that it was going to happen. And so we're paying the price. And what we do now is the kind of problem in spades that Americans have had to deal with when hostages have been taken. Hostages that are infants, young people, and people even older than myself.
Yeah,
are they getting
Professor,
medicine? I'm sorry.
No, are they getting medicine? Are they? No, not at all. And I mean, these are the things that we have to talk about because this is happening in real time. And I just, I understand that your daughter's last act was to defend her son.
Yes. Look, unlike my father-in-law, who was at Okinawa and Normandy and Sicily, and other family members who fought in the American military, there's no such thing here as the front and the rear, particularly in this age when we all have cell phones. We were on the phone with her, and we were on the phone with her son. Her son reported, the last words from her was that I hear glass breaking. They're speaking in Arabic, and I hear shots. That's the last words we heard from her. After a hiatus, we heard Rotem, her son, say that I am shot, there is blood in me, and he was instructed then not to speak. The rest of the day, we're talking about 9 to 12 hours. I don't remember the exact time right now, but the rest of the day was texting. He had to be quiet because these terrorists came back several times to the house. And at the final time, they threw in a grenade and they tried to burn it down. And why? because in the event that there were any survivors, they wanted to shoot any survivor who would walk out the front or the back door. I mean, the kind of planning and foresight that went into this malevolence is hard to imagine. This is not a struggle of human rights. There are other ways in which people achieve rights. Look at the progress we're making with Egypt, with Saudi Arabia, with Jordan, and so on and so forth. Look at Israel itself. 20+% of the students at the Technion are Arabs. At my university, Ben Gurion University, special programs for Bedouins who now head departments. 50% of the pharmacists here are Bedouins. There need not be this kind of chasm between Jew and Arab. They sent their children, when they lived in Beersheba around 15 years ago, to a joint Jewish-Arab school where the language instruction was Arabic and Hebrew, and where there were visits and learning about one another in the hope that knowledge about one another would bring about a greater sense of comedy, of accommodation, and bring about a pathway that would satisfy the needs and aspirations of all populations. These are not the people who should have been killed by hate mongers, but they were. And what happens in the future, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to these hostages. On what basis will the Hamas release them? On what national interest, when their stated national interest is the end of the Jewish state? What interest are they willing to compromise in order to allow us to be here?
Yeah, Professor, I can't begin to just tell you how much we feel and for your loss and the loss of so many people. I thank you for being with us today. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you for your news reporting, and thank you for asking me. It's a story that has to be told. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Appreciate it.